August 8th, 2005, 8:47 a.m. A routine Monday morning in Fortaleza, Brazil's fifth largest city. Humid, dense, alive with noise. An armored truck arrives at the Banco Central de Brasil, standard delivery. The crew expects nothing unusual. They open the vault. It is empty. Not robbed, not damaged. The vault door is sealed. The alarm has not triggered. The cameras show nothing unusual. The security system registers 0 intrusions. 164,700,000 Brazilian reais are gone. $70 million vanished from inside a building that nobody entered. The investigators stare at the vault floor. There is a hole, 1 meter wide, cut from below. Someone had been underneath this vault for months. They just never came through the front door. Fortaleza, the capital of Ceará state, northeastern Brazil. Population 3 million. A city that runs on heat, commerce, and controlled chaos. The streets breathe money, not quietly. And in the center of it all sits the regional headquarters of Banco Central de Brasil, the central bank. Not a commercial institution. This is the Federal Reserve apparatus of the entire Brazilian economy. The building that controls currency flow, regulates money supply, and stores physical cash for the entire northeastern corridor of the country. It is not a bank you walk into. You cannot open an account here. You cannot withdraw funds here. This building exists to do one thing: hold sovereign money. The security architecture reflects that purpose. The vault sits on the ground floor, reinforced below by 2 meters of compacted concrete. The walls are steel-lined. 110 millimeters of ballistic steel welded to 40 centimeters of Class C reinforced concrete. The vault door weighs 3 tons, bolted from a custom hydraulic mechanism. 4 locking bolts, each 60 millimeters in diameter, set into a door frame that is part of the building's structural skeleton. To access the vault, a minimum of 3 authorized officers must be physically present. Each officer carries a separate credential, biometric palm readers, alphanumeric PIN codes that cycle every 24 hours, a retinal scanner added in the 2003 upgrade. Cameras cover every approach, internal, external.
Dispatch, radio
there are
check.
no
We
blind
rolling code
spots in
3
the
to
official
scene.
blueprints.
All units be advised.
The perimeter fence carries a 5,000-volt deterrent charge. Motion sensors at 150 centimeter intervals along the outer wall. A guard rotation that changes every 4 hours. A radio-linked response unit stationed 3 blocks away. Response time under 90 seconds. The building had never been breached, not in its 41 years of operation. The architects were proud of this fact. They had designed their fortress perfectly. From the outside in. They had never considered someone coming from underneath. The man who conceived this operation had no name in the official record for months. Law enforcement would later identify the ringleader as a figure connected to organized crime networks in Sao Paulo. But at the time of the heist, he was a ghost, a logistics specialist, a man who had studied bank architecture not as an engineer, but as a predator studies terrain. He is known only by the alias the investigators would later assign him: the Architect. He was patient, methodical. He did not gamble. He calculated. His core team numbered approximately 25 individuals, a sophisticated, multidisciplinary operation that required skills far beyond the typical criminal profile. There was the civil engineer, a man who understood load-bearing soil dynamics, compressive stress, and underground airflow. Without him, the tunnel would have collapsed within the first 2 weeks. There was the electrician, a licensed professional who understood how to run a sustained power draw through improvised cable without generating a spike that might trigger an external grid meter. His work was invisible and perfect. There was the HVAC specialist. Because the deeper you go underground, the less oxygen the air contains. A tunnel 80 meters long requires active circulation. A man doing hard labor underground without ventilation would be dead in 40 minutes from CO2 buildup alone. There was the logistics coordinator, responsible for one of the most remarkable challenges of the operation, removing 10 metric tons of soil from beneath an urban property over 90 days without anyone noticing. And there were the laborers, 6 to 8 men who worked
at a gentle
in shifts,
angle,
underground,
14 degrees.
in the dark, in the heat of a Brazilian summer, moving earth by hand, shovel by shovel, bucket by bucket. They were paid well. They were told nothing about the final objective. In May of 2005, a company registered under the name
Built
Gras
underground
Decorações e
by
Eventos,
hand.
in English, Grass Decorations and Events, signed a rental agreement for a 2-story commercial property on a quiet street, approximately 78 meters from the eastern foundation wall of the Banco Central de Brasil. The company described itself as a landscaping and event decoration business. The paperwork was clean. The registration was legitimate. The tax documents were filed correctly. The company even maintained a modest display in the ground floor windows, artificial turf rolls, potted palms, event signage. Exactly the kind of business that generates regular truck traffic without attracting attention. The neighbors noticed the trucks. A crew came and went, daily, sometimes twice daily. A white box truck would pull up to the service entrance at the rear of the property. Workers in company uniforms would load it. The truck would drive away. Nobody asked what was in the bags. The smell, if anyone noticed, would have been of soil, dark, damp earth. Nobody asked about that either. Inside the property, behind a false partition wall that had been constructed during the first week of occupancy, was the entrance to the tunnel. The opening
The
measured
shipment has
70
arrived at
centimeters
checkpoint
wide
4.
by 110
Requesting clearance.
centimeters tall, just enough for a man
They've
to
spotted
crawl
the
through
cargo
on his
on the lower
hands and
levels.
knees,
You need to move
or
now.
move in a low
Copy that.
crouch while carrying
Moving to
tools.
secure the perimeter.
The first section descended at a gentle angle, 14 degrees, enough to get below the foundation depth of surrounding structures before leveling out. The first 4 meters
The
were
team
the
worked
most
only
dangerous.
during daytime hours.
The soil closest to the surface is the least stable. It wants to collapse. The civil engineer had solved this with timber, Brazilian hardwood, cut to precise lengths, installed as a box frame system, each section interlocking with the next. The same technique used in 19th century coal mines before steel came to dominate the industry. Old methods, proven methods. The tunnel did not collapse. 80 meters. That is the length of the tunnel they built. To put it in perspective, this is nearly the length of an Olympic swimming pool, built underground, by hand, in 93 days. The average team of trained military engineers using modern equipment can excavate roughly 3 meters of reinforced tunnel per day. The grass team averaged approximately 0.8 meters per day. Slower, but they had no powered excavation equipment, only manual tools, pickaxes, shovels, modified hand drills for the harder compacted sections. Every cubic centimeter of soil removed had to travel backward through the tunnel in buckets, then up the access shaft, then into the waiting truck. The logistics of this alone required military-grade coordination. The engineer calculated the load precisely. Fortaleza's subsoil is predominantly sandy alluvial clay, dense enough to hold a tunnel shape, but porous enough to allow moisture infiltration. In the wet season, groundwater would seep through the walls. The solution? A waterproof membrane, applied by hand with rollers. 2 mm thick polyethylene sheeting, sourced from an industrial supplier, stapled to the timber frame supports at 30 cm intervals. The tunnel did not flood. The electrical system was equally impressive. Running along the left wall of the tunnel, a cable conduit, custom fabricated, industrial-grade insulation rated for underground installation. The cable ran from a secondary junction box in the property's basement, wired through a standard breaker that appeared on the utility board as an auxiliary storage unit, drawing minimal amperage. The power fed 3 things. First, LED strip lighting, mounted to the upper frame at 1.5-meter intervals, enough illumination to work by without generating heat.
The lights are
Second,
on.
the ventilation system. 2 modified HVAC fans running in series. The intake fan was positioned at the tunnel entrance. The exhaust fan was positioned at a point 40 meters in, where a small bypass chamber had been excavated. The airflow system moved approximately 300 cubic meters of air per hour through the tunnel, enough to sustain 4 men working simultaneously with acceptable oxygen levels. Third, a modified intercom system. Simple, cheap. A consumer-grade baby monitor repurposed into a 2-way communication line between the tunnel entrance and the forward work position. The men at the dig site needed to speak to the men above quietly. Sound discipline was critical. The tunnel passed beneath 2 occupied properties between the rental house and the bank. The owners of those properties had no idea. But sound travels through soil. Power tool vibration travels further. The team worked only during daytime hours, business hours, when the ambient noise of the city, traffic, construction, street commerce, masked the sound of their labor. At night, the tunnel was empty. The tool marks on the walls, when investigators later examined them, showed consistent chisel patterns, methodical, row by row. The work of men who had been trained, who had done this before, or who had been very carefully instructed. Near the 65-meter mark, the soil composition changed. The sandy clay gave way to compacted gravel and rock. Progress slowed dramatically. The team adapted, modified masonry chisels, a manually operated percussion driver, the kind used by tile setters for precision breaking. Slow, incredibly slow, but silent at distance. It took 11 days to advance the final 15 meters. On August 1st, 2005, the tunnel reached the underside of the Banco Central vault. Above them, 30 centimeters of steel-reinforced concrete slab. The vault floor. Now the hardest part began. The vault floor was not a weakness the architects had ignored. It was a deliberate specification. 30 centimeters of concrete, steel rebar at 15-centimeter grid intervals. The rebar was 17mm high-tensile structural steel. The concrete was grade C40, the strongest mix commercially available at the time. To breach it with conventional tools would require a rotary hammer drill with tungsten carbide core bits, the kind used in heavy demolition work, the kind that generates noise measurable at 40 meters through open air and significantly further through solid structure. The team had no access to silent demolition technology, but the engineer had studied this. He had a different approach: controlled thermal stress. Concrete, unlike steel, has a low coefficient of thermal expansion. When concrete is heated rapidly and then cooled, it fractures internally.
There it is.
Microscopic
The
at
aperture.
first. then
so precisely
structural.
circular and
The engineer
surprisingly
used a
warm.
portable propane torch, not aimed at
does
a
not
large
touch
area,
anything.
aimed at precise points
This
along the
training.
grid, the midpoints between the rebar sections where the concrete was
We have a
unsupported.
problem inside the
Heat.
vault.
Then a rapid application of compressed gas spray. Cold. The thermal shock propagated hairline fractures. 7 treatment cycles, each covering a 40-centimeter radius around each target point. On the 4th cycle, the first crack became audible. A sound like a muffled gunshot, absorbed by the earth and the timber walls. Then they drilled. Using a rotary drill with a lowest torque setting and a carbide bit, they worked through the pre-fractured sections. What would normally take 300 rotations under load took 40. The material was compromised. The final breakthrough.
We immediately understood
core
we were
plug,
looking at a
30
professional
centimeters
engineering
thick,
operation.
30 centimeters in diameter, pushed upward through the vault floor. It landed on the vault floor with a soft ceramic thud. Inside the vault, the air was 15 degrees Celsius, dry, dark. The hole was not yet wide enough to enter. It took an additional 6 hours to widen to 1 meter diameter, using the same fracture technique in expanding rings. By 4 p.m. on August 5th, the breach was complete. They waited. Saturday, Sunday, the bank was closed. The vault was unmonitored from inside. The plan was always to enter on a weekend. Saturday, August 6th, 2005, 10:37 p.m. The city of Fortaleza is alive at this hour. Saturday night. Music from bars 3 streets over. Motorcycles. Rain earlier
This
in the
illustrates
evening.
the
air
rotation
now
system
heavy
designed to
with humidity.
frustrate exactly
The streets
this
smell
kind
of
of
wet
trace.
concrete and diesel. Inside the Gras Decorações y Eventos property, a team of 7 men gathers in the basement. They are dressed in dark clothing. Each carries a headlamp, tool belts, empty duffel bags that unfold flat for carrying. The tunnel entrance is opened. The fans are running. The lights are on. The intercom is active. 10:41 p.m. The first man enters the tunnel. The crawl takes approximately 4 minutes at a working pace. In full kit, carrying tools, it takes 6. 10:47 p.m. The team reaches the breach point. They look up through the hole into the vault. Darkness. Complete darkness. And cold air. The climate system is still running even on the weekend. The vault is climate controlled to protect the currency from humidity degradation. 11:02 p.m.
Mãos na
The
cabeça.
first man
Saia do
pulls
carro.
himself through the hole.
Este passaporte
He
é
stands
falso.
inside
Você
the
está
vault.
detido.
164,700,000 Brazilian reais surround him, stacked on pallets, wrapped in plastic, each bundle labeled, banded, certified. The physical representation of the sovereign currency reserve of northeastern Brazil. He stands still for 7 seconds. Then he gets to work. The bags go up through the hole first. Then the men follow, hauling the bags down to the tunnel relay team. The operation functions like a conveyor system. 2 men inside the vault loading. 3 men in the tunnel relaying. 2 men at the tunnel entrance sorting and stacking. The currency is banded in 50 and 100 real notes. Each pallet contains approximately 2 million reais. They do not take everything, not because they are selective on moral grounds, because they cannot carry everything. The physical weight of currency is underestimated by most people. $1 million in $100 bills weighs 10 kilograms. 1 million reais in 50 real notes weighs considerably more. They take what they can move. The operation runs for 3 hours and 51 minutes. At 2:53 a.m. on Sunday, August 7th, the last man exits the vault. The last bag travels back through the tunnel. At 3:04 a.m., the team is out of the tunnel. The bags are loaded into the truck. This had been prepared in advance. Not the usual white box truck, a different vehicle, unmarked, new plates. The bags weigh a combined 340 kilograms. The truck leaves the property at 3:11 a.m. It takes a route that avoids the 4 known CCTV intersections on the most direct path. This route had been driven 17 times in advance. The driver knew every traffic light cycle, every patrol pattern. At 3:48 a.m., the truck reaches a warehouse on the industrial edge of the city. The money is transferred. At 4:20 a.m., the warehouse is empty. At 4:22 a.m., the truck is set on fire, 12 kilometers outside the city.
The
It
architects
burns for
would think like
45 minutes
architects.
before the rural fire crew arrives. There is nothing left that identifies it.
A vault
Sunday
is
passes.
only as secure
The
as the
city of
ground it stands
Fortaleza
on.
does not know. Monday, August 8th, 8:47 a.m. The armored delivery crew arrives for a scheduled currency rotation. Standard Monday morning operation. No different from any other Monday in 11 years of scheduled runs. The vault door is opened. A security supervisor named Valdemir Ferreira, 26 years on the job, steps inside to conduct the routine pre-delivery count. He notices the debris first. Concrete fragments on the floor, fine dust.
What if I don't?
Something that looks like gravel scattered across the tiles near the southern wall. He looks down. The hole. He does not touch anything. This is training. He backs out of the vault. He radios the control center. His voice is described by colleagues later as very calm. He says, "We have a problem inside the vault." The Brazilian Federal Police arrive at 9:12 a.m. The Federal Reserve Security Team arrives at 9:31 a.m. By noon, the Polícia Federal has a forensic team inside the vault. They measure the hole, 100 centimeters in diameter, edges mechanically cut and thermally fractured. They lower a camera into the
Vault's
tunnel.
already open.
The lead
Stay
investigator, Delegado Carlos Magno, later states
this.
publicly, "We immediately understood we were looking at a professional engineering operation." The tunnel is 80 meters long, has electrical infrastructure, ventilation, structural supports. The police follow it to the rental property. They find artificial turf rolls, potted palms, event signage. The property is empty. The company, Gras Decorações e Eventos, has ceased to exist. The phone number listed on the business registration is disconnected. The registered director uses a CPF number belonging to a man who died
All
in
units,
1998.
establish the perimeter now.
The perfect
Hold your
crime.
positions on the south side.
Or nearly.
Move the civilians back.
The Brazilian Federal Police mobilized 73 agents across 3 states within 48 hours. The investigation was named Operation Satyagraha Jr., later renamed in media coverage simply as O Buraco, the hole. The first break came from a surveillance camera that nobody had anticipated. A camera mounted on a private pharmacy 2 blocks from the rental property. Not part of any security grid, just a local business owner who had installed a system 3 years earlier and never removed the footage properly. The tape showed the white box truck. 12 distinct visits over 93 days. The truck's partial plate was visible in 4 frames. The plate led to a registered vehicle in Sao Paulo, reported stolen 8 months earlier. But the plate number was inconsistent with the vehicle. Cross-referencing, revealed the plates had been cycled through 6 different trucks over the course of the operation. A rotation system designed to frustrate exactly this kind of trace. It frustrated investigators for 3 weeks. The second break came from a money changer in Belém, 500 kilometers north of Fortaleza. A man attempted to exchange an unusually large volume of 50 real notes. The serial number sequences on the notes were within the range documented as part of the Banco Central inventory. The man was arrested. He was a peripheral figure, a runner. He knew one name. That name led to an arrest in Recife on September 17, 2005. A former construction worker who had been recruited to work on the tunnel's electrical system. He had kept, against all instructions, a single photograph taken inside the tunnel on his phone. The photograph showed 2 other men. From that photograph, and the network of phone contact records obtained through a court order, the federal police began identifying members of the crew. Over the following 9 months, 7 individuals were arrested in connection with the heist. 2 in Sao Paulo, 2 in Fortaleza, 1 in Rio de Janeiro,
Nobody asked what was
1
in the
attempting to
bags.
cross into Paraguay with 400,000 reais in a modified vehicle compartment. 1 attempting to board a flight to Lisbon with a false Angolan passport. The architect was not among them. Of the 164,700,000 reais stolen, approximately 8 million was recovered. 156,700,000 reais was never found. In dollar terms, approximately $67 million gone. The 7 individuals convicted received sentences ranging from 6 to 17 years. Most
The
were
tunnel
released
did
early.
not collapse.
The Brazilian prison system's capacity constraints meant full sentence completion was rare. The architect was identified by name by investigators in 2007. A warrant was issued. He was never brought to trial. There are persistent reports, unconfirmed, that he died in an unrelated incident in 2009. There are equally persistent reports, but he is alive and living under a different identity in South America. Nobody knows. The money does not want to be found. The most remarkable element of this case, the detail that forensic investigators and criminologists
discipline was
return
critical.
to again and again, is not how the tunnel was built. It is how it was hidden. For 93 days, a team of men dug an 80-meter tunnel beneath an occupied urban neighborhood. They removed an estimated 10 to 12 metric tons of soil. They operated electrical infrastructure. They ran
At
ventilation
night,
equipment.
The tunnel was empty.
They drove trucks in and
Consistent
out of the
chisel
property
patterns.
daily.
The tool marks are
And
uniform and
nobody
precise,
reported
suggesting
anything
trained or
unusual.
very carefully instructed labor.
This is not because the operation was invisible. The neighbors saw the trucks. They smelled the soil. They heard activity. This is because a legitimate business front creates a cognitive filter in the minds of observers. When we see a company van, we do not see a threat. We see a service. The landscaping cover was not chosen randomly. It was chosen because it normalizes every element of the operation: the soil, the trucks, the tools, the crew, the physical labor. The criminal mind that designed this was not primarily an engineer. It was a social psychologist
Now,
who understood
the
that the best
hardest
place to
part
hide a secret
began.
operation is inside a boring one. The Banco Central de Brasil spent 32 million reais upgrading its physical security protocols after the heist. Subsurface motion detection, seismic sensors embedded at 3-meter intervals in the foundation, ground-penetrating radar sweeps of the surrounding soil conducted quarterly. New protocols requiring verification of all commercial rentals within a 150-meter radius of any federal banking institution. The engineers reviewed their original blueprints. They found what Notarbartolo found in Antwerp, what every engineer eventually finds. A perfect system designed against known threats, not unknown ones. The vault floor had never been hardened against upward entry because nobody had ever entered from below. It was a threat that did not exist in the historical record until it did.
15 degrees Celsius.
Security is a response to
Dry.
history. It is always lagging behind the event that forces it to evolve. The team that dug beneath Fortaleza did not exploit a structural weakness. They exploited an architectural assumption. They assumed the architects would think like architects. Walls, doors, locks, cameras. They were right. The architects had forgotten something fundamental. A vault is only as secure as the ground it stands on. And the ground is everywhere. There is a word in Portuguese, jeitinho. It means something close to the little way, a creative improvisation, a solution found through ingenuity rather than resources, a workaround for a wall. Brazilians understand jeitinho as a cultural inheritance, the ability to solve problems that appear unsolvable through the rigid application of rules, by stepping outside the rules entirely. The Fortaleza tunnel is many things: a crime, a logistical achievement, an embarrassment of federal banking security. But it is also a monument to a particular kind of thinking, the kind that looks at a 3-ton vault door and does not ask, "How do I open this?" It asks, "What if I don't?" The 156 million that was never recovered still exists somewhere. Real paper notes, real value, aging in a warehouse, a buried container, a wall cavity.
2:53
Currency that
a.m.
was
on
once
Sunday,
sovereign,
August 7th.
now stateless. The Banco Central eventually wrote off the amount, reclassified it. The practical reality of sovereign currency reserve accounting allows for this. For the men who carried those bags through an 80-meter tunnel at 3 in the morning, the money was real in a different sense. It was proof that the system was not unbeatable. It never is. Someone is always underneath, counting the meters, waiting for the floor to give way.